All right, looks like we are live. So thanks for joining everybody and happy Wednesday. I see a couple familiar names in the attendees joining here. So welcome if you know me. I'm Patrick. I'm here from Tempo representing and hosting the webinar, but really what you came here to see is John Rager and Oscar Nunez from TransUnion. So welcome guys. Appreciate all the time we spent together. John, Oscar, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, aside from your faces on the screen, both in picture form and in real video.
Hi, everybody. John Rager, Vice President, Enterprise Transformation, Agile and Program Management for TransUnion.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Oscar Nunez. I work with John in the same team, so happy to be here.
Fantastic. Appreciate you guys, John. Appreciate you, Oscar. So anybody that's not aware why you signed up and why you're in this webinar. So what we're going to be covering today is how TransUnion saved almost $1 million a year in licensing costs by moving to and adopting Tempo as their system of record for compliance, for time governance, for capitalization efforts, all kinds of fun stuff there. So we will definitely go deeper on how that was achieved and some of the victories that they got there. So I'm going to kick us off with next slide here. And actually, I think, John, you're going to be here. Who's TransUnion, right? Why did you guys do this? What was the goal?
Do you want to go into the next slide? Or
Yeah, sorry. That's why I always do that. I always say the outline and then I show the slide for the outline later. Yeah. So we're going to talk about who's TransUnion, some of the challenges. We'll cover the Timesheets integration with Jira, right? So for those of you who are not aware, Tempo is primarily a Jira native solution. So that tends to be where we find a lot of success there. The ROI, kind of where they had victories, and we'll do a small demonstration that covers a little bit around how they solve some of this in Timesheets, and then what's next in the transformation. So here you go, John.
Sounds good. Yeah, so those of you that don't know, TransUnion is one of the three big credit bureaus around the globe. It is a global company. Right now, TransUnion is in 30 plus countries and growing. We're in a highly regulated industry. A lot of governments, US governments, and also regional governments all around the globe have a lot of strict rules and standards. Data and security and data integrity is a big requirement for us. TransUnion has around 13,000 employees globally, and they do much more than just credit. We're also a big data company. Marketing solutions, fraud solutions. TransUnion also regulates all of the caller ID information for the United States and Canada, many other services. So that's a quick overview to you.
Not more than I knew about before we started working together, that's for sure.
Yeah. So for transformation here, we have the capitalization roles. So a lot of businesses, large industries, capitalize their labor development, right? The software development. And if you can capitalize, it helps your bottom line, helps your EBITDA. TransUnion does around 111 million a year in what we call IDS, internally developed software. So tracking that, reporting it, and doing it in an efficient way that passes audits is a critical component to the business. Accurate time tracking, right? The independent auditors are always reviewing the data on a regular basis. And we have to make sure that we can answer all of their questions and pass the audits because we are a publicly traded company. Visibility is really important. There were some gaps for years within TransUnion. A lot of the data wasn't being used as broadly as it could have been used, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And then, efficiency is always a top item for most businesses, right? You don't want wasted effort. You want to short circuit wasted time, right? You want to make sure you're actually spending your time delivering value and making your customers happy over paperwork.
True story. Well, you mean people don't like to track time? It's not why they come to work?
Yeah, we're trying to make it as easy as possible, right? That's the goal.
I like it. So let's talk about the challenge, right? What was the major pain points that led to needing to improve how time tracking took place, how work was capitalized?
Yeah, I think some of the next slide helps out too. But yeah, so primarily, the TransUnion through their audits, there were deficiencies that were continuously found in their audits, and they really weren't attacking the audits. They weren't, they weren't sure what to do with some of the deficiencies. It's mostly around logging and tracking, right? You have to have the work and the time that's submitted against it, and from an auditing standpoint, are those all linked electronically? What's the paper trail in that? And so there was paper. There was trails, but it was hard to get to. It was in pockets. It was disconnected. It was all over the company. And to this slide, when I did get to TransUnion 4 years ago, I assessed all of their work management tools internally. And it took, probably 6 months to identify what the target problem was in the company. We identified over 16 different work management platforms. Rally, Jira were examples. We had multiple Jira environments. We had one main Rally environment, which was 45% of the company that was on. Found Target Process, Azure DevOps, PlanView, and some teams just working out of no tool altogether. So disconnected environments, no central data lake, no visibility into all the work across the company, big opportunity to rationalize the tool sets. I came up with a criteria to select the next tool. But cost is a big piece. Use your preference and ease of use for the business, right? What about acquisitions, right? What's most likely is that next company going to be using? It's probably going to be Jira, right? Pulling this together so we could have a cohesive single environment would just be a big win for the entire organization. Teams being able to go from org to org if we have to be fungible, right? And not having to learn a whole new environment. We also had slow approval processes, or we call our authority for expenditure, or AFE process, was very cumbersome, had multiple layers of approvals. I think some future slides here, but over 17 different approval layers, and it was all in sequence. It was sequential. So it took weeks and weeks and months to get through. So
did that impact renewals for each of these systems of work that you guys were working in, or
it slowed down the flow of value, right? So if capital development is important to the business because it means we're enhancing our systems, we're creating new value, we're delivering it to our customers. And if it takes us months to get approval to start the effort, well, that's a problem, right? You want the business to be able to start when they want to start so they can efficiently deliver that value to the market. You don't want the paperwork to get in the way, and it was.
Right. Makes sense. It's I'll say that at Tempo we work with a lot of highly regulated organizations, and what you mentioned there is a common challenge, right? It's just it makes sense. Like especially when there's money involved or credit scores or anything that, if for my personal information, I want that protected. So we appreciate the rigor that goes through, but how can that be done in a way that doesn't, as you mentioned, take months before you can even start an initiative?
Right. And, there's a show I used to watch, Kitchen Impossible. This guy would come in and analyze a business and then, fix it. And a lot of the problems were just very apparent. They were very visible. Like if you'll just look at this briefly and you can see, why does it take us months to do this? Or why do we have so many systems? But nobody was doing anything about it. So tolerance and complacency will kill any business. And that was kind of what was happening.
Makes sense.
And
so you were talking when we were prepping for this about how the time tracking worked against the work. So could you elaborate on what that meant, what the user experience was, how that
So there was swivel chairing involved, right?
Yeah.
So the time tracking system, we had used Clarity Timesheets, was disconnected from the actual work that we were now doing in one tool, in Jira, right? So all the team members were on a daily basis tracking their user stories, their subtasks, their epics, their initiatives, right? All of the work was being managed in Jira now globally, but then they were swivel chairing and using this external tool to track time. And so it was disconnected from the actual work. So there was just a missed opportunity for us to just start tracking time in the tool that the teams were actually using and get rid of some of the redundancies, right? Better focus what we were doing. No economies of scale, right? Big problem.
Patrick, and I would like to add that one of the important items of that is we did not change how the team works, right? We did not change the structure, how they create the work to match finance and accounting requirements. The tool allow us to
Right.
do that without affecting how they do, even if they were using Agile, any kind of framework, or if they were using any other kind of method of work. They will continue doing that, plus we track the information that we needed for finance and accounting.
Yeah. We hear that a lot, that need to meet organizations and meet teams where they are, because change management, complacency and change management, right? Complacency could be the death of an organization. Change management could be the death of transformation. You guys are on the transformation team, right? So you had to come in with it thinking, how do we make sure that what we do sticks?
Right. That sticking point is huge. Why do transformations fail? It's what happens after the transformation, right? Where you need to create an environment where are you monitoring whether the team went back to their old way of working? Did they do what you said you were going to do? Are you listening to them? Because sometimes you need to pivot and change and adjust, and we did. Right after we went live, we found new things and we made adjustments. So we're listening to our audience. We created communities of practice and support groups. We created champions in different regions. These are all change management, transformation tactics that if you don't have, you will not succeed in the end.
Yeah. You can't just throw it out there and say, you're doing it now. It doesn't work.
Right.
It's
Right.
so, all right. So what was the breaking point, the tipping point to make a change, right?
So as Oscar and I and a few others in my team analyzed the problem statement that we had, we started digging into it. We knew like initially that we could make some gains, right? We had some wins that we could get. As we dug into it, the benefits grew exponentially, right? So we were spending approximately $1 million a year in licensing for the previous tool. Of course, there was substantial cost savings in going with Tempo into our Jira environment where all the users would benefit. So this cost, by the way, was only for around 6,000 users out of the 13,000 people in the company. Whereas when we apply an add-on, a plugin to a Jira environment, all of our 9,000 users could benefit from it, right? The approval workflows, like I said, our 34 expenditure process, the financial systems that we had to go through to get approval for capitalization were taking months. Teams were actually starting some work on these capital initiatives without approvals, and then retroactively they were taking that time and submitting into the system. So we can't do that, right? The system was causing
audit concerns there.
Right. It was the system that was in the way, not the people wanting to do the work. The context switching, right? The different tools, having to get people access to these tools. Sometimes they would lose access if they didn't update a time card for a month or two. The training, having to train people in multiple environments. And then no real-time insight. There were some reports that were being sent out to the leadership. Most of them weren't using the data that was being sent to them because the tool was really difficult to dig into and use. It wasn't user-friendly for them. And that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it has that less work about the work, right? Like, I think one of the phrases we heard, I can't remember, I don't think it was one of you guys, but it was another customer with a very similar use case. And the phrase that really stuck with me is like, we don't want to make our engineers have to be accountants, right? It's just let them spend the time doing the work, right? Building the thing in quotes. And the harder it is to do something as administrative as capturing time, the less likely you are to get accurate information. And that approach that you guys are taking is something that I hear in successful deployments, right? Like that approach of we need to meet teams where they are, but be willing to pivot. But the less friction you can have for getting that information, then the more accurate it's going to be.
Right. It's all about the developer experience,
100%.
I always say, you focus on happy teams delivering value, and if you're doing anything else, you're getting in their way.
I like it. Yeah. So we have a couple questions in the chat that came in. One of these I think we'll come back to because we'll talk about the solution and then we'll talk about some details next. So the first one is TransUnion also using an Agile poker tool to plan story points? And if so, which one? So this gets a bit into sort of future state that we'll talk about a little later, but How do you guys think about that?
So some of our guidance here, we don't explicitly tell teams how to estimate their work, but we provide some guidance across the organization. So most teams are using story points. I would say at the moment, around 40% or less are using Fibonacci. And about a year ago, I rolled out a new experiment that seems to be working where, and a lot of traditional Agilists might freak out, but we said, let's just stick with 1 point is 1 day, 1 person. And it simplified the process. It gave us a normalization, and it hasn't really been a problem for the teams. So one person, 1 point, 1 day. A lot of teams will take 2 points out for paperwork and meetings. So they'll say 8 points for a 2-week sprint. And it's worked so far.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But in the answer, yes, a lot of the teams, especially the one in development, right, and doing a lot of innovation, they use Agile Poker like one of the options. We have teams for everything, right? We have teams that are using Kanban, teams that they have a lot of experience, that they have been doing great estimation, so there is no need to change those, right? They are doing well. So we allow them to explore whatever option they feel more comfortable. What we check is in Agile, the estimation is just a metric that shows how mature is a team, right? So if they are having problems, so we provide different options. If they are doing very well, so they have the option to work with whatever they are using.
And when we developed a report called a say-do ratio, used to call it an ability to commit, where it doesn't matter whether you're doing Fibonacci or 1.1 day, or even time or days for that matter, you can take, well, what did that team commit to, or the individual for that 2-week sprint? What did they deliver? And you divide one into the other. And if you get 100%, well, then they delivered 100% what they committed to, right? If they get a 50%, then they delivered half, right? Then some teams do 150%. You can track that data. And then the second point that's important is what rate of change happened during the sprint. So did they deliver 100% of what they planned, or was it 50% of something else? Anyways, it doesn't tell you the full story, but these are important data points to look at, and it helps us normalize teams across the company in that way.
I like it. Okay. The next couple questions I think we will hit as we go through. So how do we lock down time cards? So we'll cover that when you guys talk about your periods, closing periods out. The next was story points versus estimation, I think. So the question is, some areas use story points in their views, but burn downs and different views rely on the remaining time, which is reflected in the original original time estimate, and then the remaining estimate. So are reflected against the original estimate. So we'll cover that a bit when we talk about the sort of the next steps you guys are looking at. And then this one, speaking of metrics, how has Tempo improved visibility for leadership metrics? I think this will make sense as we go through the solution of what you guys talk through. So just keep that visibility in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about timesheets integrated with Jira as the solution you guys approached.
Yeah, so it just, it's so obvious. So Jira, when I explain it to people, is like a Swiss Army knife. It's like your iPhone or your Android phone, that it's a really good platform that comes with some pretty good functionality, but there's this app marketplace out there where you can download and install apps from all different types of vendors and turn your phone into multiple different types of tools depending on your needs. Well, Jira is the same thing. So anytime I have a problem with the company, I say, well, let me see what the marketplace has. What can I add to the environment to make this tool more robust? And Timesheets is just an easy thing to do, right? Tempo, of course, is one of the premier leaders with Atlassian, and so it was an obvious choice. And also some of the other products you have that we're also looking at. So it just made sense. How can we just track time directly in Jira? And some of the leaders asked for this as well. Some of them were already tracking hours in Jira and then filling out a time card in this other tool. It was just a waste of time.
Makes sense.
Passing audits, of course, right? Addressing the deficiencies. I wasn't even aware of the deficiencies until I dug into this, and learned that there was problems that just we weren't acting on them, right? They were significant issues. Lowering cost is also always a big thing, right? It helps your return on investment because I needed money to pull this project off, but when I can tell them that I'm going to save them money in the end, it makes it a no-brainer. User experience, this was obvious. Changing users' tools is always a challenge, but this one had a short learning curve. It was a pretty short cycle. Oscar can probably speak more to that since he was the main instructor for the company. Scaling this globally. So TransUnion is a global company, and we had accounting and finance teams, multiple teams that were around the globe that we were going to be messing with their systems, changing the way they did business. A lot of them really didn't care about the experience of the developers. They just wanted the data, right? I get that. That's accounting and finance. And we were modifying their data. It was a little scary because I was afraid we were going to be providing them accuracy they'd never seen before. That's scary, right? What if the real capitalization rate is 10 million less? I'm going to get blamed for it, right? What if it's 10 million more? Is that okay? Anyways, those are some of the concerns. And having that strong data foundation, right? This data lake where from an audit standpoint and a reporting standpoint is essential.
So let's talk about how that approach you guys made then.
So we had looked around at a few different options that were in the marketplace. Tempo was an obvious selection. Some of the vendors I was talking to were premier partners with Tempo, sort of validated what we were, the path we were going down. Of course, you guys helped us with the decision by answering a lot of our questions up front. Moving this into Jira just made sense from a business standpoint. I can't say that enough. Now that we were all globally using one tool. And then, aligning this to the agile ways of working, we had, like Oscar had said, some teams doing Kanban, some Scrum Fall, Scrum Bond, 2-week sprints, 3-week sprints. Most of the company is operating in program increments on a quarterly cycle. They do 13-week program increments that are all aligned on a global schedule. So 12 weeks of sprints, and that could be 2 or 3 week sprints. And then we have 1 week where we dedicate to, we call it a commitment week, where people can use for planning. Mm-hmm. This is the final bubble picture on the right that says it all, right? I went from had so many bubbles we couldn't even fit it on that previous slide down to 3. So not only did we centralize into the Jira environment globally, we plugged in the Tempo system that's now actually interconnected with Jira instead of being the Clarity system was disconnected. Then we also added our Jira Product Discovery or JPD to give back some portfolio management practices on the intake side of our product management organization. And that's been a big win too, helping them, giving them sort of their own tool on the front end. And that one funnels into the other, right? Into what JPD into Jira Timesheets into Tempo. And there's a few more ideas out there to make this even more robust for us.
I like it. And I think we'll cover this on a later slide, so shut me up if we are. But how are you guys getting the data from Tempo and Jira over to finance now?
Yeah, so when we had to re-architect the current system that they had, the previous one, and it was a mess. There was no documentation, there was no owner. And the data was being moved to 5 or 6 different ETLs, which is, from one database to another, being mixed with some HR data along the way. Some teams in different regions were getting Excel files being delivered to a SharePoint server, and others were getting direct injections into our PeopleSoft environment in the end. And, they were comfortable with it because it worked, although it was broken, right? And it caused delays and deficiencies and those types of things. So what we did was we now extract all of the Jira data, including the Tempo and JPD information, and we put it into a Google GSP, database in the cloud, GCP, and we have Workday data, so some of the HR related data on where people work, what region they're in, even blended rates are applied to that data set. And then we use Superset as a reporting tool as well as Power BI on top of that data to provide what I would call advanced reporting. So there's an initial layer of data access and reporting that's immediate for managers and program spaces directly in Tempo, which is great, right? But then there's that extra layer that we need to then push that data to PeopleSoft, and that's where it gets married in the GCP environment.
Makes sense, yeah. And that covers a lot of the, how is the visibility improved for leadership metrics, right? So really the theme there behind your answer is you need it to be easy to access and you need it to be true. But also, even with Jira as the source of truth for where the work primarily lives, the organization is always going to be bigger than Jira, right?
Right.
So being able to pull that out, put it into Power BI visualizations, for example, for that next layer reporting, so they can take the financial system of record and so they can take the general ledger data and tie it to the timesheets data, right?
Right. And time card compliance is always critical in a business. How do you do that? Besides just telling people, demanding it, putting reminders in their calendars, right? Prodding them. And so we have a Power BI dashboard that the executive leadership has access to. There's a notification that goes out weekly, and they have drop downs, and they can see how they're comparing to other regions, and they can dig into the details and see which one of their managers they have to go after that's not approving timesheets, or maybe their team's not filling out timesheets based on the forecasts that are expected of the company. So that's part of that after you transform, supporting it model that's so critical, or you're going to fail, right? And so the interesting thing, in the first month of deployment, I was terrified that I was going to short circuit their capitalization rates and get blamed for it. And my whole organization, did such a great job. We actually exceeded the forecasts, and it was okay. So we had a favorable capitalization rate in month one, and I, breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, that's huge. Like the fact that happened month one is huge.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about, I don't know, is there anything else you need to cover on this slide, John, or you want to start talking, you guys want to start talking about the implementation?
The centralization. So a lot of the managers and directors within the organizations did not use the advanced reporting features and functionality in Clarity. I'll be honest. They stayed out of it. It was incredibly difficult to use and navigate, so they just avoided it. So they didn't use the data to drive their business decisions. What percentage of their team is working on which project? They didn't know, right? Was it OpEx or CapEx? Is it keeping the lights on? Is it run, grow, innovate, sustain? Like, they just didn't have the time information to drive their business, right? To make these corrections. So that was something that we wanted to address. And the overall operating costs, they're significantly lower, right? I don't even know the full scope because of that archaic system that we were able to get out of and just create a much more efficiency where it was from Jira to this GCP database and then to our PeopleSoft environment. And that's just for what we call our US markets. All the other international regions were getting their data straight from the source. So whether it was directly in Tempo or the secondary database.
Patrick, there are some couple questions in the chat. Well, there are a lot of questions in the chat, but a couple that I want to answer. Like they asked, what are the tools that we're using? So far, we are only using Timesheets. So it's only Tempo Timesheet where we are using. The question was why we don't just move the data and use other tools instead of Power BI. Well, we use Power BI because, to be honest, we have making so easy that they just go to a link and click on something.
It's a browser link.
All the information, right? Basically, you have everything in Tempo, but for some specific users, talking about leadership or top management, right? They want something a little bit easier. They can go and check everything, and that also is linked to another situation. In our instance of Jira, we have a specific information of the user, right? You can have the name, you can have the email, but there are other information that is important, what are all the hierarchy of reporting, right? What is the top manager that you reported, right? If that top manager wants to see everything under that, so we generate a report that shows that, right? All the CM2, CM3, we can see everything under those, and we can provide just a final number, you are 99.99% of compliance, or you are 87, right? So we create those for those managers so they can check that information in the staff meetings, right? Like how they are compliant with the timesheets that we're using.
Yeah, the leaders, anybody over director level just doesn't want to go into Jira, right? They don't want to get their hands dirty. So that's why we had these just weekly emails with a link. They click on it, Power BI report. It's just, we dumb it down, right? Make it just, because they don't have time to click through and dig into Excel files or reports and those types of things. On the M&A side here, I just can't say enough. Like, that because of our choices and our tool set selections, we've acquired 6 different companies in the past 4 years in TransUnion, and all of them were on Jira. And the integration for their data and their tools and their users was like a couple of weeks, right? Just it was so simple and straightforward. So it's paid itself back, definitely.
Excellent. Well, like it. Let me see. So the next topic we've got is on the integration. I'm looking at a couple of other questions in here that I think we can cover during the implementation topics. So one of the ones, Oscar, we'll keep in mind here is there any experience syncing timesheets to an ERP? It's similar to what you guys already use in the API calls to extract the data, so that could be relevant for pulling the data for creating invoices. And Andy, I do not mind you hijacking the thread. I thought that was Funman Andy, and I see your link. That is Funman Andy. You should definitely give that blog post that he put there a read on capitalizing or billable hours versus story points. So the question there during implementation, did you conduct a proof of concept? How is data potentially migrated to like an ERP for generating invoices? And let's see. Struggles with estimated versus remaining time. Mm-hmm. And then there was also a question about how you guys manage people changing estimates where they work. So as a project is in flux, as a project manager, change it in Jira. Is it happening in JPD? So there's just some of the change management aspects of that user behavior that may persist after the implementation. So I think those will be some good things to keep in mind here.
Okay.
All right. So I believe, Oscar, you're going to talk largely about the implementation journey, right?
Yeah, sure. So,
Awesome.
just start with rollout this for almost 6,000 users. We started with 5,500. Now we are almost the 6,000. It have been growing a lot. What we did was like, we did a proof of concept, not only for the teams to let them know how they see it, if they see it easier or friendly, but also for accounting and finance that they can see that actually the process that we created was working for them and was providing all the information that they needed. They were like, to be honest, very scared about that, right? Like, we cannot provide the information that they need. So basically, we did the proof of concept for them, and with results that also people said like, oh, it is easier. I don't have to go to other tool and do the time tracking. I can do it myself here. So yes, we did that proof of concept. It was very good. And we used later that specific group of people to talk with them and say like, okay, it's not Oscar anymore saying like, this is working or this is perfect. No, let's talk with them, ask them questions so they can answer that. We use a train-to-trainer model. So we, in John Rugger team, we have all the Scrum Masters and RTs at the time. So we start with them, showing the tool, making feel comfortable, having a staging where they can play around. We did training. We did a calendar of training with everybody. We did also like work meetings where you can go there, ask whatever question you have, right? And we answer that question for them. They can share the screen and we can see what was the problem. If we keep it like for a long time until nobody appears in the
working
meeting.
sessions. Yeah, Oscar and I would sit on the call for an hour or two and just wait for somebody to join in. And but that's a good sign, right? When people stop joining in those working sessions was great. And Oscar also created local regional champions that were able to carry on a 24-hour clock of training, be points of contact, because otherwise Oscar becomes a single weakness thread, right, where everybody's going to him. And I saw he was getting overloaded, so we tried to separate that out. It's part of the transition plan.
Mhm. Well, we created a change management process because there were some changes in what we were doing. One of the goals that we have was, as John was explaining, we have a lot of customization in the system, and everything was working in a way that we get to the end, right? But there was delays and everything. We were with the idea of using the tool out of the box. We don't want to make customization. We don't want to do anything. We just want to use it as it is, take advantage of what we have, do not change the process in development, just use the same process that we have in development, add in the process of login time, um, adjust some specific information, like for example, a specific project management, how instead of logging 2 minutes in every item that they touch every day, right? Like they have a specific item where they can log the time every day. And that was rolled out to global. In the past, they have different process for different regions versus US, and now we have the same process for everybody with the same data, with the same information. So whatever we are using for any region, we can use it for the rest. So whatever improvement that we are planning also in the future is going to impact all at the same time. So that is also a benefit for this.
Yeah, and to Oscar's point, because we're all on one tool, and we came up with a monthly cycle where you can edit and enter and approve timesheets within it's a 30-day period, plus there's about a 7-day period into the next month. And then we close that month down. We close it down globally. And so that forced the all of the different finance groups all around the globe to follow the same exact process. And I had the senior vice president of accounting and finance. They said to me, "Hey, this is great. You guys have fixed things we couldn't even come close to solving before because the system's forcing us to." Anyways, it was it's a good thing, good outcome.
Yeah, I like it. So let's talk about some of the challenges along the way, because I think some of these might be for anybody that has pursued a similar endeavor before. I bet some of these challenges will resonate. And the
Yeah.
finance line, Oscar, you just mentioned that there are many countries where the data capture is taking place, probably different regulations and different rules around finance in each of those locations. So you have a lot to think about there.
Yeah, and actually, we always assume that they are doing the best, right, to maintain the process, right? In some cases, the process was as it is because they have been using that for years. So there was a lot of concerns about what we did. We also have meetings with regions separately to get that right in Latin, in APAC, in Europe. We have those meetings with them to check what are the requirements. At the end, we found out that, yeah, it is the same process, the same kind of information that is needed, and we can consolidate that in a process. I would say that in finance, the challenge was more like how they can check the data, right? In some cases, they love the option that they can go to Tempo and check a specific information, but most of them are very, very good in Excel, and they wanting a tool that they can use it. So we also provide that specific functionality with Tempo, like, yeah, you just go here, raw data, download that, and you can have whatever report you want and everything. So they were happy that they can see that everything was there without losing any information, and that they can test the data as well, right? That they can go and review, like, oh yeah, what is said here is the reality of what we have in the system. Regarding cultural change and extracting requirements, as John was saying, there was not an owner of the tool, but there were a lot of stakeholders involved, and they were like, oh, I need this, and they don't want to do anything else.
No
Like, I want
compromise.
this, and
Yeah.
this is what I want to get. And so we talked with them and said, like, okay, like, but we need to work together in this, right? It's not about like just putting the tool and that's it. It's also we will need to do some changes in order to make everything possible, but you are going to obtain what you need. At the beginning, again, was a lot of people like concerns about if we are going to actually deliver what they need. One that we started to run data run the pilot, and they were seeing the data that obviously made them feel comfortable. So we started to add more and more. And then when they said, like, okay, we are ready, and we switched tools in one day to another. So on Friday you were in one tool, on Monday you started with Tempo in Jira. So
Yeah.
quite simple. So
Something else to add is, I've talked to other businesses out of the industry, and not all of you might not have these extreme auditing requirements that requires you to track every 15 minutes or in every hour and do these timesheets. We did. But because we're highly regulated globally and the type of work that we're in, the auditing company that we work with demanded this level of detail that's above and beyond what some other businesses may need, right? Some companies may be able to capitalize based on percentage of an engineer's time or by story points. We just didn't have that option. So we had to provide that extra level of detail as easy as possible, right? And so that was our objective.
All right. Let's talk about some wins that you had, right? So what was the impact of all this? What were the benefits?
Well, we had favorable capitalization. That was a big sigh of relief for me and for Oscar after all the effort we had put into this, and terrified that we were going to get blamed for lack of capitalization in the company. So that was the biggest thing. Streamlining the timesheets, right? We did get a lot of positive feedback from people saying, finally, I don't have to swivel chair or learn a new tool. Right? It's all in the same place. The cost benefits, of course, are no brainer. They're easy to see right off the bat. Being able to provide multiple levels of reporting, instantaneous, easy to get to, huge for the local teams, right, and the regional organizations. Being able to check all the other boxes for the advanced reporting and views that we were creating, right, that we were able to provide that as well, and getting the data in a very similar format to accounting and finance, and our end point, which was PeopleSoft, was right. That's all they cared about, right? They didn't really care about how we got there, but we did. The accuracy, right? Actual work that teams are working in their tickets, whether it's subtasks or stories or bugs or defects, right? They're actually putting time against it in their timesheets into the week. They're submitting them. They have the ability to edit or, approve the timesheets. But so the accuracy level was significantly greater than it was before. Before they were doing 40 hours a week, same thing as last week, submit. Completely disconnected from the lower level of detail of how much time they were spending on a story or a project, right? Or an initiative or whatever you might call it in your business. I think we also took out some other deficiencies along the way, like our AFE or authority for expenditure process that had 17 workflow approvals. We explained to the finance team, you've got 30 days to fill out a timesheet and submit it. And for the quarterly processes, anyways, they wound up streamlining the process down to 4 layers of approval. So now the AFEs all get completed a week or two before the quarter. So
That's huge.
Yeah.
Because you get people doing work on it anyway, right? Like
exactly.
But waiting for the approval, they're starting and backdating. And
yeah. So now they're able to get approval before they start the work in advance and then actually track the work. That was huge from an auditing standpoint.
Perfect. And then there was some ROI there, and the unexpected benefits, I think, was the the compliance process being streamlined from 17 to 4 steps. That's huge.
Yeah. And seeing several weeks ago some audit results that they were compliant, that was just huge. Yeah. The cost reductions, like I said, right. We had to build up some of the cloud environment. So there was a little additional cost for the GCP infrastructure that we've got to pay to hold all that data. But that's because we had these advanced reporting needs on the tail side of things. But from a licensing standpoint, yeah, we had significant savings. And also we had made a business decision to move away from Broadcom as a whole. So not only was it Clarity timesheets, but Clarity PPM, Rally, and the VMware and some other things.
I like it. All right, so we're going to do a short demo of timesheets, just kind of a high level for anybody that hasn't seen it before. Some of the things that TransUnion is doing to solve these problems, and then we'll come back to kind of what's next for TransUnion, and we'll also talk about any guidance, some advice you have for other enterprises, and how they can take what you've already learned and try to replicate it, right?
There is a question that it is interesting. There is a,
Yeah.
sorry if I miss it, but I want to get like get entries requires the people to be very diligent on touching and managing the Jira tickets, correct? So in our process, they were working directly in Jira, and that was a benefit, right? Like they were in Jira, so moving to that, they will continue doing that. They just log in time in the same ticket, so they can have that. Something that is very useful is that in Tempo, um, and let's imagine that I forget to log my time today for whatever reason, right? I have a meeting, I forget to log my time today. So when I come tomorrow, I have all the list of the items that are there. Even you can get the meetings, or you can get everything that you touch in Jira appears there, so you can basically remember, oh yeah, I worked on this, and also give you like the recommendation of the time based on what how much time was open. So that allows a lot to the user to make that right. Like if they forget, especially if they forget it on Friday, that shouldn't happen. But yeah, we are all humans, so in some cases happen, right? You forget it on Friday. When you come back on Monday with your fresh mind because you enjoyed your weekend, you have that information there. So that helps a lot. And obviously we have there are emails that can be sent as well. Just like oh, remember you forget to send your timesheets, or there are hours missing. Also in the top of Tempo, we carefully go to all the users and put it in the right amount of hours that they need to log, right? We have people that log 7.5 hours a week. There are people that are half time and they log 4 hours per day, or there are people that they log 45 hours per week. So depending on how much time they are logging, they have that reminder there in the top where they can see the amount of time that they need to log, and they can see the reminders and everything. And so it helps a lot to the user in terms of if they forget it, but definitely the user need to do some of that part, right? It's not an automated process. But it is can be automated is because I saw that a question as well is about like story points versus hours. We are only using timesheets, and what you can do is an automation that convert your story points to an average in original estimate. So you move all what they are doing in Agile, like the sprint ceremonies, even if they are using Save, if they are doing estimation in areas for a quarter, you can move that story points to original estimates, so you can get an idea of the amount of hours. The thing is that in some cases, some people interpret that like, oh, this is the actual amount of hours that you have to spend. No, it's an estimate, right? It's an original estimate that you get from, this is more or less what you are going to spend. So yeah, we use it in that way. And you can, again, do an automation that generate that and convert the hours to, the story points to hours if you need to use the original estimate hours.
Awesome. Thank you, Oscar. Yeah. And I pulled up while you were chatting here, some of the things you were talking about are part of what we could cover is, you mentioned people have a limit of how many hours a day, what workload scheme they're in. So you may have a part-time employee, it's only 4 hours, etc. And one of the ways that Tempo tends to find a lot of stickiness within organizations is by making it less work about the work, right? One of the things we've said before is don't make your engineers be accountants, or let them build the thing. So inside the timesheets view, if I've got suggestions because I had a meeting that referenced a specific epic or story, and I'm just validating from my calendar integration, like, yes, I spent that time here. Or maybe I had time planned for me. Some of this is on the what's next of capacity planner, right? There's stories slotted for me and assigned to me in a sprint. Can have some suggested work logs here. So the idea is to provide suggestions, whether it's from calendars or source control like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, and proposing that as suggested work logs for the individual so they can spend more time. One of the ways I like to describe it is Jira is not usually where work is done. Right? Jira is where work is described. So even with Jira being closer to the work than Clarity was, the work is still taking place, especially for developers. Like they're writing code or they're in meetings and doing peer reviews. So being able to tap into the source control and show suggested work logs from that, or tap into meetings, saves a lot of that mental overhead for any given individual, so they can spend less work on the work, right? More time actually building products. And from one of the questions came up was on reporting and what's available in Tempo, what's Power BI, what's in Atlassian Analytics, how does that all come through, right? So out of the box at TransUnion, they're running reports on, I've got this group by my different capitalization accounts and whether something's CapEx or OpEx, and then the epics that roll up to that. So being able to aggregate the work natively out of the box in tool, right? Now, where it goes to that advanced layer is sometimes they're downloading this and putting it in a spreadsheet, because finance tends to like spreadsheet. Like people that work in finance are usually really good at getting the data they want out of a spreadsheet. So we want to make sure they still have that option, right? But then for that out of the that executive layer reporting, that's pulling the PeopleSoft in, and that's where they're tying into Power BI. And I believe you guys are using just our API calls to pull that data out. And gotcha. So I know you're pulling API calls out to do it. We have other customers that use our BI connectors. So we have a connector that'll pull directly to Power BI without any code. And then on the Atlassian Analytics front, we have some customers that are either using our API calls or our SQL connector to put it in like a SQL Server or Postgres database or Oracle, right? And using that to ingest into Atlassian Analytics. So there's a lot of flavors for how people are capturing the data, and it usually depends on exactly how they're going to be using it, right? Who the target personas are. So whether that's pulling that out pulling that out for high level, or directly inside of Jira, if I need to see the time spent by customer journey, or actually I lied on my labels here. So change, grow, run, right? Where the time is split across my various business pillars, or if I have data hygiene issues that I need to fix, right? So being able to pull it in just inside of a Jira dashboard. And then transparency, a lot of what you're seeing here is custom charts ingesting timesheets data. So I don't believe this is in use at TransUnion, but it's something that you thought about. So I just want to do a quick high-level demo here, right, about some of the ways that you're solving these problems. So let's talk about the lessons learned and what's next. So we have just a couple minutes left here.
Mm-hmm.
So some advice for other enterprises. Some of these things you guys mentioned as we went through.
Document everything. We were fortunate that we recorded all of the meetings we had with our stakeholders. And then later we were messing with a financial system, and they were going to audit our process to replace a financial system. So we had to take all those recordings and feed them into AI and spit out action items and meeting notes and key decisions and everything. We were able to do that, fortunately, because we had those recordings. So document everything, every decision, every requirement, sign-offs, because you're touching a financial system. So that's something that I would have liked to have done up front better. We had to reverse engineer a system. That took time, more time than I had anticipated for them to dig into. And who were the stakeholders who owned these things? A lot of people were gone because the system had just been there for years, and they didn't even know who owned it and why it was there. There's no documentation. Mm-hmm. Identifying a single stakeholder for this, who's going to own this, make key decisions, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a group of people that are never going to make up their mind on things. So that was a challenge in the beginning. Oscar, I'm sure you have some things to add.
No, that is, yeah, fortunately, that is the main thing, right? Like how you engage with your teams, right? A lot of the requests, we find out later that were like a nice to have, right? More like that real requirement that you have to or you must have to in your system were more like a nice to have or someone preference, right? So when we have those meetings, we try to hear everybody, understand that, but at the end, we check the outcome, right? Like what we need to deliver from this, what is the information that we really need, and the rest was like, okay. Like for example, someone was requiring to have like different fields to have IDs, and then we said like, but why you need so many IDs? Where are you using those? At the end, all were the same, just in the process that they have it in that moment, they have those items in that way. So we said like, okay, yeah, no, we can do it with just one, and then you use that one for identify the other ones because you don't need to have so many in the system recorded for no reason. So
Right.
yes, John was saying, documenting everything because then you have to come back and share everything. We even do every single workflow of everything, like how account was created with every role, like who is creating, who get the approval to create accounts, all those kind of things that looks small. Yeah, you have to document that. Train other people, right? Do not try to train everybody. I don't know if it is a company with 30 users, but I assume that this is for bigger
Sure.
companies, right? But you cannot train everybody. So you get a team. We have a team with the Tempo account manager. We have another team with people that is helping manager to approve. We have other with people that is logging time. So we have different audience for the different kind of situations. And we did that as well with the trainees. When we said to focus on workflow, not just in the tools, it's like the tool is what it is, and there is not a something that fits everything in every single company. So it's more like, okay, can you adapt this? Can you make this right? Uh, Happily
Yeah.
enough, we are using also the tool for other purpose, right? Like some people were using it for on call, so they are logging
Mm.
time for on call purposes. I'm using the same tool without changing anything. We are able to do that. There are other things that they are not interested on productivity reports, but there are others that they have to do it for other reason, right? Or consult with clients or things like that.
You're
And they were using also for that without
Yeah.
changing anything.
What's next for TransUnion? So one of the things that I'll just cover this aspect. You guys are
Yeah.
looking at capacity planner to
Mhm.
take that plan versus actual concept, right? And then potentially road mapping to get that layer as part of that executive visibility in addition to the Power BI.
And
So
Gantt charts. Yeah. We want
and the
to
structure Gantt
display some of the other tools we've got out there and pull them into Jira where the work's being tracked. Yeah.
for sure. So with that, I'll say thank you, John. Thank you, Oscar. We really appreciate your time, appreciate the advocacy and thought leadership here. Is there any way that you want people to be able to get in touch with you? Like, do you want to put we can send your
Yeah.
LinkedIn's out in the
Connect
recap?
with me on LinkedIn. If anyone's interested, more than happy to also, if you have, questions, get on the phone, what have you. I wish I had someone like us available to me when we started this journey. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm trying to talk with others, is to share the good karma.
I love it.
And we saw that there are a lot of questions. So in my case as well,
Yeah.
linking.
We can follow up, Patrick. If you have, you can send those
Yeah, that's
questions.
because
Give
we
us
have
a day.
more questions than we had time to answer. So I
Yeah.
think one of the things we'll also do is we'll look through and see if there's anything we didn't cover. We'll include
There is
answers to those in the recaps.
there is one talking about like how you manage like other time that is not into tickets like a meeting, things like that. There is in the tool a functionality called internal um, items that basically what we did is we created a project or a space in Jira. We add those specific buckets. We don't want to have a huge list, so we make buckets, make a description like oh, this is for holiday in case that you need to track it. This is PTO, right? So you can track those. We have admins, meetings, things like that. So we use internal. We don't want everybody to create those in their own spaces. We want to have one centralized place, so the tool allow me to do that. There are other cases, like for example, agile ceremonies that I saw the question as well. For agile ceremonies, yes, we have also that internal ticket that they can use it. They can also create in their own space. They can manage by themselves. Taking consideration that some of those ceremonies are not CapEx, are what we call OpEx, right? So it's we are interested on that information as well, but our main focus is or detail is on the in the CapEx. But yeah, we have those items created so they can log time and they can see everything that they need, and they can log the time directly in the system. They don't have to check anything. They just go to a tab, drop down, drag and drop the item that they need, and they can do that.
I love it. It's that fits really well in the theme of solution rationalization, right? So if you're centralizing on Jira and you're paying for Jira and you're paying for Tempo, what else can you solve with it? So you're not buying something else and
Right.
spending money somewhere else.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, again, thank you, John. Thank you, Oscar. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.